Did a dinosaur eat Joseph Smith's seer stone? From historian Dan Vogel to writers of this prominent essay on LDS.org to individuals throughout history, people tout this stone as the stone owned by Joseph Smith and used to translate the Book of Mormon. But there is a huge problem with Joseph's alleged seer stone. The problem is that the stone originates in Wyoming. That's 2,000 miles away from New York, where Joseph is supposed to have found the stone. It's a stone from Wyoming's Banded Iron Formations. Similar stones from Wyoming's Banded Iron Formation can be found across the internet, from landscaping rocks to rocks for sale to YouTube rock hounding masters like the Wyoming Stone Ranger. Here's one for sale on Etsy. And here's some more. The seller's description even mentions these are just like Joseph Smith's seer stone. Lot of 10 rounded banded iron formation stones, Joseph Smith seer stones, LDS healing muggle stone, rock art, Genesis gemstone, home decor. So where do dinosaurs fit into this? A 2018 article by Christopher Kirkland titled The Surprising Geology of Joseph Smith's seer stone attempts to solve the Wyoming dilemma by suggesting that in ancient Wyoming, the stone was eaten by a dinosaur and carried to upstate New York, where it was properly placed at the right stratification layer to be discovered by Joseph Smith. From the article, quote, "The first thing he told me is that the stone is almost definitely banded iron jasper. He then told me that it has a nickname, Genesis stone. So how did it get there? The experts told me that judging by the egg-like shape as well as the way it appeared to be polished and its distant location from the deposit area, it was probably a gastrolith, also known as a gizzard stone. Banded iron jasper is rare enough on its own, but a gizzard stone is one that a dinosaur inadvertently digests, and then when it dies and decays, the stone returns to the environment. The time spent inside the dinosaur would actually aid in digestion, as well as polish the stone's edges in a manner slightly different than it would if it were smoothed out in a stream or on a beach. So millions of years ago, a dinosaur near Wyoming or Minnesota probably ate a rock, traversed to upstate New York, and died. The dinosaur is an attempt to get the stone the 2,000 miles to New York so that it is possible for Joseph Smith to find. Joseph Smith chancing upon the only rock carried from the plains of Wyoming to New York is unlikely. Do the geological stratification layers in Wyoming and New York even line up in time to make that possible? Here is what likely happened. Somehow, sometime before 1853, Brigham Young acquires the stone himself or from someone, maybe Phineas. It then goes on to become one of his favorite tall tales about how he has Joseph Smith's very own seer stone. We will show how 90% of the seer stone sources are actually testifying about Brigham Young's tall tale stone. Here is Brigham Young's 1853 and 1855 account of how he got the stone. Both occurred in the Council with the 12. In the first 1853 account, the point of discussion is how many apostles there should be. In the 1855 account, the point of discussion moves through a document brought up by Orson Hyde to the martyrdom. The meeting starts off. Question: is there any law in any of the writings of the prophets or apostles that intimates there should not be any more ordained apostles? Only the 12? In response to this question, the following remarks were made. Orson Hyde: I don't think that Joseph knows any more than the present presiding officer. Brigham Young: if I am faithful, who knows but the Lord would give me a Urim and Thummim. Parley Pratt: you can do without it, but is easier. Brigham Young: the Urim and Thummim belongs to the lesser priesthood by right. Moses has the priesthood and revelation, but Aaron had the Urim and Thummim. I doing the things, or I do own the things. Joseph put the Urim and Thummim back with the plates when he had done translating. I have Joseph's first seer stone, which I had from Oliver Cowdery, the one found by the well, by which he got the plates of the Book of Mormon. Joseph had 3, which Emma has 2 small ones and 1 large one. And here's what Brigham Young said in 1855. Brigham Young: Oliver told the lawyer in Michigan he did not believe the Book of Mormon to be true, but he knew it to be true. He died at Far West. Oliver sent me Joseph's first seer stone. Oliver always kept it until he sent it to me. The second seer stone Dr. Williams has. The third one was a very large. and Joseph found 2 small ones on the beach in Nauvoo, a little larger than a black walnut without the shack on. Joseph said there's a stone for every person on the earth. I don't know that I ever had a desire to have one. If we were to write John Whitmer for the early history, he would ask $5,000. I would like to get the Bible that Joseph marked, but I heard Emma has destroyed it. So let's go through the sources and identify those that are testifying of Brigham's tall tale or incorporating elements from the stone collection. We start in 2012 with Grant Palmer, who witnessed he saw Brigham stones. Grant witnesses that there were 3 stones together in the collection: the Wyoming stone, a babyfoot stone, and brown mudstone. He says this about getting access to this collection. So if 13 of us went down, and I think most of them are dead, I was about the youngest guy in that session, and I don't know the significance of it at the time. But he brought out some handwriting of Joseph Smith, some of his hair, and 3 seer stones that belonged to Joseph Smith. One of them was a little white stone about like that, and it was shaped like a baby's foot. And for years I thought, what does this mean? Well, you know, when you stamp a baby's foot on a blessing book, or a baby book, it's kind of narrow at one end, and then as it gets up to the toes, it gets wider, and that's what it looked like. A white stone, small, about the size of a baby foot, and shaped like a baby's foot. And then there was another stone that looked like milk chocolate. It was the size of a softball, about like that. And it's like someone had molded mud and had dried marks to mold that stone. It had become extremely hard. And then going on. And then, of course, the third one was the one he used for complete translation of the Book of Mormon. The one we have today. Very significant stone. Almost black with white streaks in it. Bigger than a chicken's egg. Smaller than a turkey egg. About like that. He found it in a well in Clark's Chase's property, which is very close to the Smith family. And of course, being curious, I got right up to it, and I couldn't see a thing. David Whitmer, 17th of October, 1886. By fervent prayer, and by otherwise humbling himself, the prophet, however, again found favor, and was presented with a strange oval-shaped chocolate-colored stone, about the size of an egg, only more flat, which it was promised would serve the same purpose as the missing Urim and Thummim. The later was a pair of transparent stones set in a bow-shaped frame, and very much resembled a pair of spectacles. With this stone, all of the present Book of Mormon was translated. It is the only one of these relics which is not in the possession of the Whitmers. For years Oliver Cowdery surrounded it with care and solicitude. But at his death, old Phineas Young, a brother of Brigham Young, and an old-time and once intimate friend of the Cowdery family, came out from Salt Lake City, and during his visit he contrived to get the stone from its hiding place, through a little deceptive sophistry expended upon the grief-stricken widow. When he returned to Utah, he carried it in triumphant to the apostles of Brigham Young's Lion House. Here's Andrew Jensen in 1880s, talking about David Whitmer. When 116 pages were completed, Smith entrusted them to Martin Harris to take to his home with a view to convert his family to the new faith. They were placed at night in a bureau drawer, and the next morning were missing, having been stolen. They were never found and never replaced, so that the Book of Mormon today is short that number of pages of the original matter. As a chastisement for this carelessness, the Urim and Thummim was taken from Smith. But by humbling himself, he again found favor with the Lord, and was presented with a strange, oval-shaped, chocolate-covered stone, about the size of an egg, but more flat, which it was promised should answer the same purpose. With this stone, all the present book was translated. The prophet would place that stone in a hat, then put his face in the hat, and read the words that appeared thereon. This stone was confided to Oliver Cowdery, and preserved by him until his death in 1850. After that event, Phineas Young succeeded in getting it from Cowdery's widow, and it is among the sacred relics preserved at Salt Lake City. And here is a note from Andrew Jensen. This is somewhat misleading. Both the Urim and Thummim and seer stone were returned to Joseph, and according to the best information obtained, he used both in translating the Book of Mormon. Next, we have W.D. Purple's account in 1877. He said when he was a lad he heard of a neighboring girl some 3 miles from him, who could look into a glass and see anything, however hidden from others, that he was seized upon with a strong desire to see her and her glass, that after much effort he induced his parents to let him visit her. He did so, and was permitted to look in the glass which was placed in a hat, to exclude the light. He was greatly surprised to see but one thing, which was a small stone a great way off. It soon became luminous and dazzled his eyes, and after a short time it became as intense as the midday sun. He said that the stone was under the roots of a tree or shrub as large as his arm, situated about a mile up a small stream that puts it in on the south side of Lake Erie, not far from New York and Pennsylvania line. He often had opportunity to look into the glass, and with the same result. The luminous stone alone attracted his attention. This singular circumstance occupied his mind for some years, when he left his father's house, and with his youthful zeal traveled west in search of this luminous stone. After traveling some 150 miles, he found himself at the mouth of the creek. He did not have the glass with him, but he knew its exact location. He borrowed an old axe and a hoe, and repaired to the tree. With some labor and exertion he found the stone, carried it to the creek, washed and wiped it dry, sat down on the bank, placed it in his hat, and discovered, that time, place and distance were annihilated, that all intervening obstacles were removed, and that he possessed one of the attributes of deity, an all-seeing eye. On the request of the court, he exhibited the stone. It was about the size of a small hen's egg, in the shape of a high instep shoe. It was composed of layers of different colors, passing diagonally through it. It was very hard and smooth, perhaps being carried in the pocket. Here's Wilford Woodruff in 1859. President Young also said that the seer stone which Joseph Smith first obtained, he got in an iron kettle 25 feet underground. He saw it while looking in another seer stone, which a person had. He went right to the spot, dug, and found it. James E. Talmage, 1893. President Woodruff, in relation to the seer stone known as Gesalem, which was shown of the Lord to the prophet Joseph, to be some 30 feet underground, and which he obtained by digging under the pretense of excavating for a well, as related in his own history. This remarkable stone was used by the prophet. Samuel Bateman, 17 August 1887. On Sunday last I saw and handled the seer stone that the prophet Joseph Smith had. It was a dark color, not round on one side. It was shaped like the top of a baby's shoe, one end like the toe of the shoe and the other round. Pomeroy Tucker, 1867. In September 1819, a curious stone was found in the digging of a well upon the premise of Mr. Clark Chase, near Palmyra. The stone attracted particular notice on account of its peculiar shape, resembling that of a child's foot. It was of whitish glassy appearance, through opaque, resembling quartz. Joseph Smith Sr. and his elder son Alvin and Hiram did the chief labor of this digging well, and Joseph Jr. had been a frequenter in the progress of the work, as an idle looker-on and young and lounger, manifested a special fancy for this geological curiosity, and he carried it home with him. Though this act of plunder was against the strenuous protestations of Mr. Chase's children, who claimed it to be its rightful owner, Joseph kept this stone and ever afterward refused its restoration to the claimants. Very soon it transpired that he could see wonderful things by its aid. This idea was rapidly enlarged upon from day to day, and in a short time his spiritual endowment was so developed that he exerted the gift and power, with the stone at his eyes, of revealing both things existing and things to come. Lorenzo Saunders, 12th of November, 1884. Willard Chase claimed his sister Sally had a peepstone. The Lord bless you, I have seen her peepstone 100 times. It was a little bit of a stone, and it was green, and she would hold it before light. After I left there, it was 30 years ago, after I left there, I cannot tell you whether the peepstone was used or not, as I told Joe Smith, when he dug one out of the well on Chase's farm in the shape of a baby's foot. They dug that hole for money. Chase and the Smiths all together was digging it. I knew all about the stone. Edmund Chase told me about it. He lives there now, this side of Kalamazoo. He is a man older than I am. His name is Edmund Chase. Joseph Fielding Smith, 1st March 1959. We have been taught since the days of the prophet that the Urim and Thummim were returned with the plates to the angel. We have not record of the prophet having the Urim and Thummim after the organization of the church. Statements of translation by the Urim and Thummim after that date are evidently errors. The statement has been made that the Urim and Thummim was on the altar of the Manti Temple when the building was dedicated. The Urim and Thummim so spoken of, however, was the seer stone, which was in the possession of the prophet Joseph Smith in early days. This seer stone is now in the possession of the church. In conclusion, the seer stones found in the church history collections have questioned authenticity. We know this because the brown stone can be identified as Wyoming banded iron, which is 2,000 miles away from where Joseph Smith supposedly found it. Brigham Young loved to tell a tall tale where he has Joseph's stones. Most of the historical sources on the book are repeating this tall tale, or elements of it.